vote, 8 House Republicans broke ranks and voted with the Democrats on that bill. Joining us now is one of them, Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. Why did you cast your vote to reopen or fund at least part of the government?
I think shutdowns are stupid. I think it's the dumbest way to do government in the world, and people laugh at us when we can't get our act together and we use shutdown as a way for leverage. This goes to both sides, by the way. This isn't an attack on the president or just the Democrats. I voted for this because I said, look, I want to build a border wall. I support it. I voted for the money. I think the president is right to say that if we're going to have a negotiation, Nancy Pelosi's got to get off her absolutely no wall position, because from that position it's untenable. But my view is when we can open parts of government and in essence kind of release hostages in this process, in this really bad way of doing government, I'll vote for it if the bill's agreeable. So for the next 3 bills that are going to come up, if they're agreeable, if they're close to what I believe should be the priorities, I'll vote for them. And if they're not, I'll vote against them. But I'm going to operate by looking at each bill on its merits. 7
of your Republican colleagues in the House joined you. What's your message to the others? Do you think they should vote with you?
No, I think everybody has to make that internal decision. I mean, I think there's no doubt that there's this idea that it's not going anywhere. I mean, the House is going to pass it. The Senate's not going to do anything with it. And it gets into the politics at that point. What gives the president more leverage? And I think people are right to vote their conscience on that. For me, I just looked at it and said, I represent 700-some thousand people, and I'm going to vote on the bill based on its merits. And the more hostages we can get out of the room in this terrible process of government, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to vote for it.
It's been widely reported by everyone who was in that meeting that the president put his hand on the table, either he slammed it or hit it, walked out and said, bye-bye. Is that an effective way to negotiate an end to this?
No, and I also don't think, though, if it's true that, the president said, hey, if I reopen government, will you talk about a wall? And she goes, absolutely not. That's not an effective way either. And I think we have to be fair on this, which is the president has never said that he will not do Dreamers or not do DACA ever. Nancy Pelosi has said she will never do the wall ever. If she can come off that position, I look at this and say, this is an issue I think we can solve. We can get DACA and Dreamers. We can get the wall money done. Immigration, honestly, is one of the easiest issues to solve out here if we would all get past our desire to give the other side no wins whatsoever. We are like 8 days into this new Congress, and we're already in re-election mode. There's got to be a moment, for God's sakes, when we can take even just a week and actually govern before we turn to re-election politics.
I saw something which blew my mind yesterday, which was that the Coast Guard support organization, put out tips to the Coast Guard members who won't receive paychecks tomorrow, and these are just some of them. These people won't get paid, so the Coast Guard had to suggest to them, if you need the money, have a garage sale. Sell unwanted items on the newspaper. Babysit if you have to. Walk dogs if you have to. The Coast Guard, for whatever reason, they took this down. I don't know if it was because it was embarrassing to have it out there. But, Congressman, you're a lieutenant colonel in the Air National Guard. When you see this, what do you think?
I think it's stupid. I mean, I think... look, they're all going to get paid. I want to be clear about that. When this ends, they're going to get paid for these days. So it's not, they're not going to lose the money, but it's obviously a cash flow issue with many people that live paycheck to paycheck. This is not how the federal government should operate. And again, in our broken political system, and if you're sitting here saying, well, it's the other side's fault, it's the Republicans, or you're Republicans saying it's the Democrats, you're the problem, because the problem is it's everybody's fault. This has started years ago, where we start using these stupid shutdown leverage points to try to get our way, because we can't give the other side any kind of a win. I get that there's issues that are like the Holy Grail out here, and fight for those. But there are also issues that are really easy to solve, and immigration is one of them. But we're stuck here with, we can't give the other side a win because it'll help us in the next election. I think it's frustrating.
All right, I want to talk to you about Syria now, which is an issue you care deeply about. And I learned for the first time yesterday, you actually met with the president to talk about his decision to pull U.S. troops out of Syria. The Secretary of State, I'm not sure you've had a chance to hear this, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Egypt. He just gave a speech. This is what he said just a few minutes ago about pulling troops out of Syria.
It is possible to hold in your head the thought that we would withdraw our forces, our uniformed forces, from Syria and continue America's crushing campaign, where we have taken down 99% of the caliphate in Syria, and continue that. And we are intent upon that.
I honestly don't know where that leaves us now, because initially the president said we're pulling troops out of Syria now, then it became 4 months, then it became conditional on John Bolton's words, and now Mike Pompeo's back to we can do it and still fight ISIS. What do you think it is?
Well, I think the president needs to put clear guidance out. I think there's an idea, I hope, where he recognizes that, look, withdrawing from Syria is a good plan, but we need to do it in the right conditions. We need to make sure Iran's defeated. We need to make sure our base in Tanf that is blocking the proverbial highway of resupply to the enemies of Israel, and continue to execute the fight against ISIS. I mean, ISIS will triple their numbers overnight if we leave and basically declare victory without victory. So I think it's going to be the president having to put more guidance out. But my hope is and he deserves compliments for this, is reassessing the idea of an immediate withdrawal and saying that wouldn't be right. We'll have to see. The proof is in the pudding. But I'll tell you, just leaving Syria all of a sudden will be the biggest boon to ISIS in a long time.
I think we're all waiting to hear from him directly on it, because we've heard things that confuse the matter from John Bolton and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Last question, again, on something I just learned yesterday. In this BuzzFeed lawsuit over the Steele dossier, which was part of investigation, whatnot, into Russian meddling, it's reported that you got a copy of this dossier in the late fall, early winter of 2016. You were one of the first people to get it. Explain this and what you did with it.
Yeah, thank you for asking me about it, because this has been like on the internet troll kind of thing. About a few hours before this was released on BuzzFeed, I was handed a copy of the dossier. I looked at it, put it away, never met Christopher Steele. There's implications that somehow I got it from Christopher Steele. I think there was an attempt before this came out on BuzzFeed to disseminate this as widely as possible, and I happened to be in the crossfire of that. So obviously didn't do anything with it. There's no conspiracy here, but the person who did it named me in a lawsuit because he remembered to having given it to me in a deposition, and that's how that came out. But, any idea of a conspiracy of me being involved in this is ludicrous and silly.
Do you have any sense of why it was you or one of the people that was given it?
No idea. I think they were trying to push this thing out as widely as possible, and I happen to know the guy that was doing it from prior stuff in foreign policy, and I think he just came by and goes, "Here you go." 3 hours later, it's out on BuzzFeed.
So you never had a chance to give it to anybody else, or
no?
John
and
McCain?
I never would have.
Okay.
No, absolutely not.
Adam Kinzinger, Congressman from Illinois, thanks for joining us this morning and talking about a range of subjects. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Take care.
Allison?